Hey everyone, how's it going? We've got some post State of the Union chat. Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. Hey everyone. Yeah, so State of the Union just happened. If you didn't watch it, God bless you. Protect your peace. Someone said, glad you stayed away. Me too. Yeah, I didn't go to all that. I knew that was going to be a mess. And personally, I watched it from home. I paid attention to what the president was saying. I watched it so you didn't have to. So if you didn't, that's okay. I watched the whole thing, but I watched it from home. Everybody makes different decisions. I just felt like I couldn't. I didn't feel like I could legitimize his presence. That being said, I know different people had different takes on it. In terms of the House of Representatives, I'll give you an alternative perspective. In terms of the House of Representatives, some people feel, and it is true, that the State of the Union occurs in the House of Representatives, known as the People's House. And technically, in terms of the proceedings of the State of the Union, an interesting thing about the House is that it is different from almost every other chamber in that only House members are typically allowed in the House of Representatives. So anybody else that is brought into the House, that walks into the House, has to be invited. And so Trump actually has to be formally invited to the House floor in order to be allowed into the House floor. Same thing with all those senators and the cabinet members, etc. So, I think other people had a certain logic, which is that this is the people's house, and Trump showing up should not kind of force the duly elected representatives of that chamber, especially those who disagree with him, out. So, that's some of the perspective there. Anyways, I watched from home, and if you didn't, honestly, and I listen to Trump. I do, because he has won 2 presidential elections. Now, the first one was not by popular vote, and the second vote, he has not won more than 50% of the U.S. electorate, but he has won these elections nevertheless. So I listen to him. I listen to what he says as an observer, and I have to tell you, I feel like even if you're like a big Trump fan, this speech was not his best. He rambled a lot. He was reading a lot of lists. He was reading a lot of wrong information on lists. And, to be honest, to me, it was giving word minimum for a school essay, and you just kind of start typing things so that you get to the word minimum. That's what it was giving, except for the fact that this was the longest State of the Union speech in American, I think it was the longest or the second longest speech or a joint address / State of the Union speech in history. I think it was like him and like a Bill Clinton speech, I think they were saying on television shortly after. And so he talked a lot, but he didn't say much. And I want to tell you why that is. Like, why get up there? And even if you disagree with it, why get up there and not give the most compelling story that you can give? Why get up there and just like read number after number after number in these cuts, which are not real, by the way? Why rattle off and make all these claims that like, about like you found all these 140-year-olds who are taking checks from Social Security, which is not real, by the way? Why do that? And I'm going to tell you why. Because just like I said in our last live, we have to remain focused, because our focus is the same thing as their focus. They keep talking about all this waste, which, by the way, like almost all these numbers that Doge has been putting out ends up being fake. They say, like, they'll come up with some initial number and Doge themselves has to revise it down. And so they get the headline saying like, oh, we got so much, but then they all end up revising it down. And so why are they doing this? Like I said before, it's all about Medicaid. It's all about what they're not saying. Don't you find it interesting that Donald Trump, if you listen to that speech, Donald Trump said a lot of things. He said a lot of random things about studies and waste and all this other stuff. He did not talk about Medicaid. Not once. And as a certain right-wing operative likes to say, MAGA's on Medicaid. And MAGA, Trump is coming for your Medicaid. MAGA, Republicans are coming for your Medicaid. And the reason they are rattling off all of these things, because listen, where there is waste, we should address it. Where there is corruption, we should address it. Where there's fraud and abuse, we should address it. But don't you think that if you found a bunch of money in the couch cushions, that you would put that to expanding Medicaid, improving schools, fixing our roads, right? But that's not what they're planning on doing. The reason they're shaking all these couch cushions and the reason that they are rattling off all these numbers is because all those numbers they are trying to add up into one of the most massive tax cuts for billionaires and the 1%, probably in modern American history. And do not forget that. Don't forget that. It's not just about what Trump is saying. It's about the big, obvious things that he is ignoring, y'all, okay? Medicaid. Don't you find it interesting that he did not mention Medicaid once? Once? The largest source of health insurance, one of the largest insurers in the United States that impacts most Americans. And by the way, 30% of Medicaid money goes to Medicare recipients too. So he's doing that for a reason, because he's scared. If he was confident about his attacks on Medicaid, he would have said something, wouldn't he? He's confident about his attacks on immigrants. He's confident about his attacks on federal workers. He's confident about all those things. Why won't he own up and Republicans own up to their attacks on Medicaid? And if you are a Donald Trump supporter and you believe him when he says we're not going to touch Medicaid, why wouldn't he say that in his speech? I mean, it's one of the most vulnerable points that Republicans have right now is this attack on Medicaid. They know it's sinking them. In fact, the NRCC, this is an organization that's like kind of in charge of electing Republicans across the country. They came in this week and they told every Republican in the House of Representatives to stop doing town halls. To stop doing town halls. Why? Because they're getting too much heat over Medicaid. And personally, I think they're trying to bully Republicans to get in line to try to line up to vote to gut Medicaid. And so they want to extract Republicans out of their communities, out of their districts, so they don't feel as connected, so they isolate them so they can be more easily manipulated and bullied into cutting Medicaid. And if Donald Trump were so proud about it, he would own it. And if it wasn't true, this is a massive political vulnerability. He could have ended tonight a lot of the speculation and a lot of the vulnerability that Republicans were experiencing right now if he went up on that podium and said, we're not going to touch Medicaid. But he didn't say that, did he? He didn't say that. Mark my words. They're coming after it. And all of that rattling off on Social Security and trying to frame Social Security as largely wasteful, this idea that there's like checks going out, tons of Social Security checks going out to dead people. No. Social Security monitors who passes away and processes who passes away. That doesn't mean they're cutting a check to people who pass away. And they are setting all of this up. They are trying to trick you. They're trying to trick your grandparents. They're trying to trick young people into thinking that it's all wasteful so that they can get away with cutting it to pieces. It's the same thing with Medicaid. Mike Johnson is going on television talking about how people who are on Medicaid are just all able-bodied 29-year-old young men who are playing video games. Medicaid, let me tell you all, Republicans have attacked Medicaid so often for decades that any little sliver of fat that you can possibly gut from it has largely all been trimmed away. This is not the first time that Republicans have gone up, and frankly, anybody has gone up to talk about efficiency. And so understand, and I'm talking directly to Republicans right now, because I know some of y'all love to be on my feeds, so welcome, and I'm happy that you're here. To all the Republicans who are on Medicare, who are on Medicaid, who maybe you're on children's health insurance. And by the way, a lot of states name these insurance programs different things. Like, New York has a different children's health insurance program, and so on and so forth. So if you have like a little state healthcare program, it's probably public funded, or it might have some sort of public connection to it. And I want you to ask your representative if they're going to touch any Medicaid dollars at all. And if they try to tell you, oh yeah, there's a ton of waste, ask them, how much? How much waste? Like, ask for the receipt. Ask for the receipt. If they want to say there's waste, ask for the receipt. Because what they are trying to cut from Medicaid, I'm going to tell you, is somewhere to the tune of $880 billion from Medicaid. Okay? $880 billion. And I sit on the committee that Medicaid goes through. And the math ain't mathin'. There's, even when you talk to Republicans, their wildest dream fantasy of the amount of so-called waste that they have identified, if you believe absolutely everything, which like they include long-term care as waste, like they include actual certain kinds of health care as wasteful. In their wildest fantasies, their number is still $50 billion. So where's the other $830 billion coming from? It's coming from grandma. It's coming from your prescriptions. It's coming from your care. It's coming from your insulin. It's coming from your kids' copay. They are setting up to rob you. And that is the moral of the story of this State of the Union tonight. He was yammering and he was blabbering and he was reading off listicles like this was the longest BuzzFeed right-wing compilation of all time. It was boring. It was unsettling, very dangerous in terms of how he is tearing apart U.S. alliances, tearing apart, at our allies, attacking our allies. It's not to undermine the seriousness of what he is doing, but it is to really communicate that he was trying to dance around their number one priority, which is to rob and gut Medicaid, Medicare, and all of our public systems, Social Security, etc., in order to pay for tax cuts for billionaires. And let me tell you something. As far as taxes go, he only actually talked about no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security benefits, and no tax on overtime. That is, I can talk about those specific things, but let me tell you something. Those tax cuts are a little tiny line in terms of the entire tax bill. It is like 90%, well, maybe not 90. It is overwhelmingly tax cuts for billionaires, corporations. It's the write-offs on the yachts. It's the write-offs on the private jets. It's the rich getting richer. This bill is the rich getting richer. And then they put, as little lipstick on a pig, these little crumbs of no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security benefits, and no tax on overtime. Let's talk about a couple of these things. In terms of no tax on tips, obviously you all know, I was a waitress for many years. I was a bartender on many years. Someone said, your sweater, guys, I made it. Thank you. It's all, my hair's covering all the holes up here, so. But in terms of no tax on tips, listen, I was a waitress. I was a bartender. I get it. And if you live off of tips, I get it. The one thing that I want people to think about is, even as a waitress, if any of you all else have gone like completely mad with every single job being a tipped job with an iPad screen now, like especially during COVID. I mean, it's even to the point where the freaking self-checkouts at the airport get tip screens. If you are tired of that, I do think it's important for us to recognize the danger of every job becoming a tipped job. And all of us then now having to pay each other's wages, not just in waitressing, not just in bartending. I'm talking about everything. And I think it's just a precipice that we all need to think about, because it's not, there's a very careful and slippery slope here that we just need to pause and consider, because then we can very easily enter a world where no one is paid, where like no one's employer is like actually paying their wages, and we're all just tipping each other and essentially GoFundMeing the entire economy. And that is the one area where I want us to be thoughtful about, okay? Thoughtful about. And because historically we think of tip jobs as waitresses, bartenders, hospitality, but we all have also been experiencing the typification of a lot more jobs outside of that. And if you don't want every single person that you interact with starting to turn an iPad screen around, we need to take this very carefully, because employers need to pay their employees a living wage. Employers need to pay their employees a living goddamn wage. And this idea that we are going to transfer and disincentivize and prevent or give people an outing, massive corporations an out from paying a living wage to making everyone and incentivizing everyone into becoming a tipped worker. I will be the first to tell you, as a waitress, as a bartender in New York City, the volatility of being a tipped worker is a big deal. Now, we choose it. We have that job, you know. That's a separate issue. But if it gets to a point where no one can get a stable job because everything's become typified, because we've changed and altered the tax code to reward employers for not paying a living wage and for paying sub-minimum tipped wages, I want us to really think about that. Really think about that, number one. Number two, no taxes on Social Security benefits. Another one, on its face, listen, we can talk about that, but I want to tell you about how Social Security is funded. Because we hear all the time, right? Like, especially if you're a millennial, I don't know if Gen Z, when y'all were in high school, tell me in the comments. But when I was in high school, we would get these little, like, sometimes like right-wing videos that got wheeled into our classrooms that were like, I mean, it happened to me, where it was like, oh, Social Security is gonna run out of money. You guys aren't gonna get Social Security. Just so you know, Social Security is running out of money. It's running out of money. They have been priming us to give up on the Social Security system for a long time. But let me tell you something, why that is not the case, okay? Social Security there are financial issues with Social Security, but let me tell you why. Because we all get taxed we all pay into Social Security, right? Like if you have a job and you pull up your pay stub, you can look at your pay stub, how much money you pay in Social Security. And it's a lot of money at the end of the year. Like it's a lot of money for us, for a normal person. If you're making 20, 30, if you're making 30, 40, 50, $60,000 a year, you look at the end of the year, how much money you've paid into Social Security. It's a lot of money. But that money, the amount of money that you pay into Social Security stops at $250,000. If your income is $250,000, you have a cap. You don't really pay into it proportionately as much. All you need to do is lift that maximum income cap of $250,000 on Social Security, and we're good. Social Security does not, you eliminate overnight any sort of solvency issue that the right wing and Republicans want to tell you that Social Security has. So let's revisit why Trump's proposal on not taxing Social Security benefits is a problem. Now, if we want to, like, the idea on its face, I think is something that could potentially be negotiable, right? Because on its face, it's not like on its face, not whatever. But the way that they have structured, the way that Donald Trump and the Republican Party have structured the no tax on Social Security benefits, their proposal is the following. Currently, Social Security, the taxes on Social Security benefits actually go around, the taxes on Social Security benefits go around to help fund Social Security. It goes back into the Social Security fund. Now, when they take away the taxes on Social Security benefits, what Trump is proposing that they do is you take away the tax and then you take away the Social Security funding. So the way that the little wrapper that they've put on it is no tax on Social Security, but the fine print is that they're trying to make Social Security run out of money faster. They're trying to bankrupt Social Security by selling it as a no tax on Social Security benefits. Now, if we wanted to approach that, we would lift the cap on lift the $250,000 income cap on Social Security so that we can fully fund Social Security, not have to worry about a solvency issue at all, and then we can talk about the tax on benefits and see what possibilities there are there. So scam, and then no tax on overtime. Okay, I hear that. Also, just so you know, there are some people and some professions on overtime that also make a lot of money. And so, is there going to be any income cap on that? Because I will tell you, Republicans want to means test Medicaid left, right, up, and down. You all know, if anybody here has ever had any experience with Medicaid, they basically floss everything about your life for you to be able to get the tiniest amount of help on your health care. So if we're going to give a huge amount of money for no tax on overtime, are they going to plan on doing the same thing? Or is there going to be any sort of income cap on it? Or can you make an unlimited amount of income and still get the tax benefits? What if you make $250,000 a year? Do you still think that those folks shouldn't pay taxes? Shouldn't contribute? What about people who make most of their, it's not to say that these things are flat out up or down. It's to say those are the only 3 proposals that really have any relevance to working people. And I'm just saying, think about it a little bit more. Just think about it just a little bit under the surface. And even then, those 3 things, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no benefits, and no tax on overtime, represent this much of a tax package that is this big. And this much of it is give money to Elon Musk, give money to Jeff Bezos, give money to Mark Zuckerberg, give money to the biggest corporations in America, and this much of that tax package has anything to do with you, and even this part is still kind of scamming you a little bit. So that's in terms of the substance of it. And then, by the way, all of this, the money for all of this is taking out of Medicaid. We're going to take all of this out of Medicaid, and then we're going to move it over here, give this much to billionaires, and then give this much in dubious things, maybe for you because it sounds good on a podium, but when you actually open the hood, it's kind of crazy. So that's that. And I'm going to see if I can take so I know people are like crying, but listen, I just want to break that down for you. But I don't want to just leave you with that. Okay. I want to, I'm going to dive into some of your questions here. Folks are saying, AOC, we're listening. We hear you. Tell us what to do. So, I think there's a couple of things. There are some folks that are on here that are interested in electoral actions. Some people here who are not interested in electoral actions. I'm going to start electorally. These Republicans, I'm telling you all, they are getting scared. Trump not mentioning Medicaid at the State of the Union is the game. He doesn't talk about what he fears. And he knows it's dynamite. The House Republicans know that it's dynamite for them. And that's why they're talking about not hosting town halls. We need to be creatively organizing in Republican districts. And I don't want to hear que lo que Republicans don't listen. They are afraid of this. I'm telling you. If they weren't afraid of it, they would continue to be hosting their town halls. If they weren't afraid of it, Trump would have said something. They're afraid of it. And the reason they're trying not to host the town halls, and the reason that Trump is not even using the word Medicaid at the State of the Union speech is precisely because they don't want people talking about it, and they don't want people making noise about it. So what we need to do is that if you are near a Republican district, which a lot of people are, if you are near a Republican district, and not even if you're near a Republican district, if you are in a Republican district and your Republican is not hosting a town hall, it's time to do community town halls. It's time to do community teach-ins. It's time to do community town halls. It is time to start advertising their absence, okay? Advertise their absence. In New York City has a representative. New York City has a Republican representative, Nicole Malliotakis. Brooklyn and Staten Island. It is time, if she is following the party line and not doing a town hall, guess what? It's time for you to do a town hall. It's time for us to start doing community town halls. Mike Lawler out in Westchester County. You've got Republicans all across the country. Jeff Van Drew in New Jersey, I don't want y'all to say this is an R+20 seat. Guys, if Democrats have lost D+, a lot seats over the years, Republicans can lose R+10 seats. Just straight up. Like, if Democrats can step on a rake, Republicans can step on a rake. And I am telling you, they are stepping on one of the biggest rakes in modern American history. We are seeing Social Security. They are messing with Social Security, y'all. I need you to understand how much of a political no-go that has been for both parties for a very long time. For a reason, because your stuff will collapse. Republicans have wanted to go after Social Security for a long time. They haven't, because if they did, they would lose in big numbers. In big numbers. MAGA's on Medicaid. And you're on Medicaid. And I've had family on Medicaid. This is the part when people want to talk about transcending party. When people want to talk about transcending party, now's the moment to transcend party. If you are a fan of Donald Trump and you like to punish yourself by watching my live streams, welcome. I'm still fighting for your health care anyway. If you are MAGA and you're on Social Security, congratulations. Welcome. I'm fighting for your benefits too. Because I actually believe that people should age with dignity in this country. I believe that people should have access to health care. They want to talk about work requirements. They want to say, oh, all these people with benefits, Medicaid especially. I want to take all your preconceptions just like about any other program to the side for a second. Medicaid specifically. They want to talk about adding more work requirements to Medicaid. The amount of people who like fall under this, like percentage wise, it is almost no one. It is almost no one. What does happen when you implement paperwork requirements? Sorry guys, I didn't weave in my ends here. If you're a knitter, I need to do that next. But I was really excited about finishing the sweater, so I put it on. What was I saying? So if you are, what was I talking about? I was talking about Social Security. Guys, help me out in the chat. Work requirements. The amount of people that like are actually, if you are, for example, 29 and you're on Medicaid, and you are not working, you are most likely disabled. You most likely have a major disability. Like these ideas, when they talk about like, if you do not have a job and you do not have a job for a long period of time, and like the percentage of people on Medicaid, it's like, I don't quote me on it, but I think it's like 3 or 4%. Very, very, very small. And those are people who are often looking for work. And the vast majority of people on Medicaid, low income, because we know what private health insurance is like, right? Low income, disabled, major disabilities that would really prevent people from having like full-time work, or any other kind of extenuating circumstance. Medicaid has been means tested to death. So they're coming after it. And like, this is as someone who believes that healthcare is a human right. I personally believe in a single payer healthcare system. But if you want to compromise and go with a public option, at the end of the day, like, the worst sin that can happen, in my view, the worst sin that can happen is that you accidentally gave someone health care. You accidentally let someone see a doctor. And that is like a crime, because why? And before people say we don't have the money for it, we don't quote unquote have the money for a better and improved social safety net, because we let assholes like Elon Musk gut Medicaid and gut Social Security in order for him to pay for A, his own tax cuts, and B, his own $1 billion in private federal contracts. This guy takes billions and billions of your tax dollars, of your public funds, and it's not just Elon. All these guys, a lot of these tech guys that were standing behind Trump at the inauguration, a lot of tech talks about themselves as tech, but they're really just defense contractors. They're the new Boeing. They're the new Lockheed Martin. They're defense contractors. And they are robbing us of the tiny slivers of what we have left in our collective public social safety net in order to get billion-dollar defense contracts. Because here's the thing. You want to hear another interesting fact? You could fire every single federal worker and it would still be something only like 4% of the federal budget. Where's all the rest of it going? If you actually wanted to go after waste, fraud, and abuse, you would go after defense contractors. You would go after a lot of other contractors. But the problem is, those are the guys who are making the money off of cuts to Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. And they fund propaganda for it. And they buy platforms like Twitter and Meta and all these other things. And they influence what you see so that you don't see what they do. Okay? So understand the stakes here. So what do? We cannot give up on winning the hearts and minds of our fellow Americans, okay? Yes, the power problem is up here, but the actual work, I'm so serious. The actual work that we have to do is on a person-to-person basis. I'm going to take Westchester County as an example. Westchester County, I went to public school in Westchester County. That county, big parts of Westchester, are currently represented by a Republican. Those are like neighbors. Those are people that you know, that I know. Just work on them. And I'm not saying you have to fight with people. I am saying that the work of persuasion is actually the work of community. And you're not going to persuade anybody. You are not going to debate anybody into your side, into convincing you of your side. You are going to embrace people and connect people and create community with people to win them over. This is a work, because I've got to tell you, because a lot of people say, like, where's the Democratic Party? This is failure of the Democratic Party. And listen, it's no secret that I have had my own, I came in primarying a Democrat, okay? I got into office because I ran against a Democrat. And I ran against a member of Democratic leadership. And he had millions and millions of dollars. And I was just a waitress. And we won. And so when I won, my initial reception from the Democratic Party was extremely hostile. And I was primaried at the first chance that they got, very, very well funded. It was like a $3 million primary challenge against me by my own party. Like, trust me when I say that I get it. And when I am in conversations in these rooms, one of the things that I also learn and also know is that a lot of these people, like, yes, and it's not to dismiss serious problems with big money. It's not to dismiss the structural corruption that exists in our political system. But also, a lot of people do represent districts that don't see things the same way, who have voters that don't see I have traveled the country, and you would just be really surprised. I mean, guys, like, Donald Trump won the election, Republicans won the Senate, and Republicans won the House. And some of that was a rejection of Democrats, and some of it was an embrace of Republicans. And we can do things, I think, to shape and address the rejection of the Democratic Party, which in many ways, depending on the thing, I find to be eminently understandable. But I think sometimes people forget at the embrace of the Republican Party, because I think that's harder to look in the mirror. But we have to, if we're going to win this thing. We have to do it. We just do. And that is actually, like, that is lateral work. That is the work of community. It's the stuff that we don't want to do, right? No one wants to be, like, there are plenty of folks, and some people are legitimately not safe. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell the trans community to endanger themselves or anything like that. But, like, you know, there are people out there, like, if you actually have ever canvassed before and knock on doors, you know that, like, most people do not have neat worldviews that fit in one category or another. It's a hodgepodge of things. And they'll have some from one and some from the other. And, like, the most important thing that you can do is find those people and start to build relationship with them now. Because a lot of people don't change how they vote based on a debate. A lot of people may not change how they vote because they see a video from me. Maybe some do. But most people, like, a lot of people will change how they vote based on someone they care about. Sometimes. I know a lot of people have had a lot of painful experiences where that's not the case. But if you slowly, you know, it's like when people start seeing actions happen around them, when they start, you know, first it's like, oh, there's a town hall down the street. They're not going to go, but they're going to notice that it's happening. People start getting the message eventually. And that heartbeat starts now. It can, and this to me is where I think one area where the Democratic Party has historically been quite weak is we can't show up for election season. Like, we need to be beating hearts. We need to be, and I don't mean that like emotionally. I mean, like, for me, you know, I won my election. And because I ran on a message of, and I ran against, the whole reason I ran is because I felt like our local representation was taking us for granted. And he wasn't accountable, and that, you know, there wasn't accountability to us. That's why I ran. And so because I won the way that I did, because I ran against the Democratic Party establishment, because I wasn't supposed to win, because they still tried to kick me out. Like, I never took that for granted. And I do year-round organizing. And I'm not the only one. There are plenty of good members that I think sometimes don't get the attention that they deserve. And do really good work. But, you know, it's not just the party, it's like all of us. And it's about who we can change. It's about who we can change. And that's hard, right? How many of us have had a family member or like someone that you care about that you've lost to this kind of like Trump dark web? How many young boys do you know that get sucked up into like this Andrew Tate stuff? I feel genuinely I don't even feel defensive about it or angry about it. I feel like really bummed that the right wing is like really dooming a lot of trying to doom a lot of little boys into unhappiness and like conditioning a lot of men into loneliness because of these ideas that they have around other people. Like, it's really sad to be like, it's genuinely sad. And, you know, I think, that work that's like really complicated, that's the work that we need to do. There's just no two ways around it. I mean, I know you and I, like, you see those election results. You know, like, Trump has substantial support, and we have to do a lot of work. Yes, targeting it up at people in power, but if we can do the lateral work and showing up laterally, it's not just, it is about applying pressure to elected officials. And it is also about transforming each other. And let me tell you, they do it to us. Don't they? Don't they? You know? Gen Z had a decent amount of Gen Z. I mean, listen, Gen Z didn't vote for Trump. Let's be very clear. But there were numbers there. Gen X was like the most Trumpy voting generation. They voted, I believe they voted for Trump more than even baby boomers did. You know, but here's the thing. If they swung it, so can we. And we really need to do that work because it is foundational. It is foundational, and it's where they have directed a lot of their energy, and it's time for us to do that too. So, wrapping up, it's midnight. That was a long ass speech, and I got work tomorrow. See y'all. Bye-bye.